Welcome to this preview of the armies here for this little 1,000-point game. This will be the Grey Knights facing off against the Adeptus Mechanicus forces, and this is the Grey Knights incursion force. You have a Grand Master Nemesis Dreadnought armor. He is the warlord. He has first to the fray, reroll failed charges. Next to him, to the left, you have Mr. Castellan Crow, the new model that I've primed. Haven't actually painted yet, but I had to get him on the tabletop. Next to him is the new Lucky Dreadnought, also mostly primed, not even finished priming him yet. I just really wanted to play a game, and I ended up having a little extra time today. Have a 5-man Terminator squad, have 5-man Interceptor squad, and a 5-man Terminator squad. Yes, they're painted up like my paladins, but that's not the point. So that is the Grey Knights incursion force. Comes out at 1,004 points, I think. So, I cheated. But the Adeptus Mechanicus force is at 1,002 points, so I don't feel too bad. And here's the Adeptus Mechanicus incursion force. We'll start over here. We have a Vanguard squad. We have Castellan robots and a cybernetic data smith. We have the 2 tech priests. The one on the right is the warlord, and he has the data psalm. I'll have to correct myself on that. I'll tell you what that is in a minute. But he's the warlord. He has one of the newer warlord traits, and that's part of why I don't remember the name. It's one where at the beginning of the turn you can select one of 3 options, and everybody within 6 inches can either reroll failed charges or reroll hit rolls of 1, I think. And then there's one other option. So I will get that straight once we're actually playing a game. To the left is a second tech priest. He has paid the command point to have a warlord trait, Magos Biologist, I believe is how it's pronounced. It lets him reroll failed wounds in combat, and it just makes him kind of fun. We'll try that out today and see how it goes, and he's carrying the special gun. So that's him. Then we have a squad of 3 Cataphren destroyers. These guys have the phosphorus blasters and the plasma culverins. These 3 destroyers have the flamers and the plasma culverins. And then, last but not least, we have the Dune Crawler. And he is going to be rocking out with the Neutron Heavy Laser and the Cognos Heavy Stubbers. Alright, so you've seen, or you should have seen, the deployment happening, trying out some fun new features like time-lapse to help with that and speed it up a little bit. We'll just talk about it briefly. For this mission, it's called Resupply. It's mission number 12. I realized that went a little fast in the time-lapse video, but I did roll for it. And mission number 12 has an interesting deployment zone where both these deployment zones are only 6 inches, and it's on your long table edge. 6 inches up from that long table edge, and that means that the center of the board, it's only 9 inches from edge to edge. It means it's an 18-inch no man's land, and almost every weapon in the game is at least 24 inches, unless it's a flamer or a pistol. So, kind of interesting. Everybody's in range to do just about everything in this. Could make for a problem, especially for the Grey Knights if they do not get first turn. We'll talk about some terrain features here. This Terminator squad and Castellan Crow are behind what I would describe as a cluster of rock trees. That's what we're going to call these. So these are going to be dense cover. So if you're shooting through them, it's -1 to hit. So that's why they're kind of wrapped around it back here. It might protect them a little bit from this side of the table. You got some obstacles that'll give light cover to infantry nearby. That building in the corner will be line of sight blocking. Actually, I'm not entirely sure that it's 5 inches tall. Let's do a quick check. It is 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so if you count the top of this thing, it's only 4.5. So it's not going to give, it's not going to be obscuring terrain, but it will provide some cover, line of sight blocking potentially, not necessarily, at least for the destroyers behind it, it is. We got a building there, or half of a building, it's a ruin. That one is obscuring. And then some rock formations and a hangar of sorts, some crates, some barrels stacked together with a hangar at the top, considering that an ammunitions bunker. And this is big enough that it's obscuring for these units at least, so the dreadnought is hidden behind it from the dune crawler, but not from those destroyers back there. And the interceptor squad, terminators, lots of things that if the AdMech go first, well, the AdMech got to choose deployment zones, so the Grey Knights kind of got stuck with what was left, and it doesn't seem like there's quite as much cover on the side for the Grey Knights. So we'll come back in a minute, we'll do the roll-off, and we'll see who's going to get to go first. I was going to also discuss the secondaries for the mission real quick, so I'm going to come back over here. Excuse that. So we'll talk about these briefly. I have this on another screen for the secondaries. So for the Grey Knights, they took engage on all fronts because you're spread out already in 2 fronts, and teleport shenanigans, things like that, makes it easy for them to achieve that one. Deploy scramblers is a little different. Don't always want to give up a unit of Grey Knights. However, because it gives you 10 points if you can deploy scramblers 3 times, it's kind of a good way for this army to score points in a game like this where it might not be guaranteed that things are going to still be alive after 2 or 3 turns. So we're going to try that out. And then we're taking the mission specific one, secure landing sites. And you get, starting in turn 2 at the end of your command phase, if you control the 2 objective markers in the center of the board in the no man's land, there's a red die on one and a white die on the other. You get a certain number of points per turn for controlling those. In addition to the primary, which is hold 1, you get 5 points. Hold 2, you have 10 points. And if you hold more than the opponent, you have another 5 points. So we're going to try that, see if we can't pull that off, because we're going to contest those objectives one way or the other, and hopefully the Grey Knights can pull that out. I don't know. The AdMech are pretty famous for having ferocious firepower right now, so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. For the AdMech, they have grind them down with all of their shooting. The idea is that there will not be many Grey Knights left by the end of turn 2 or 3, so grind them down should be pretty simple. Abhor the Witch, there are no psychers with his AdMech army, so all they have to do is kill a unit to get 3 points. If they kill a character, that's 5. And secure landing sites. So this army also wants to get out and sit on the objectives, and especially with all their firepower, make the Grey Knights come to them and have to endure the shooting. If they charge, have to endure overwatch, things like that. So we're going to be fighting over those objectives in the middle. Yeah, that could be a bit of a problem for the Grey Knights. Not going to be a great matchup, but that doesn't mean that the game is over at the beginning. There's always a chance, especially 9th edition. You can make up points in many, many ways in this game. So we'll do the roll-off in a minute, and then we'll get this game started. For the roll-off, see who gets first turn. The green die is going to be for the Adeptus Mechanicus, and the white die is going to be for the Grey Knights. Let's see what happens. Oh, yeah. Adeptus Mechanicus is going to choose to take the first turn. No question about it. Alright, we're back after movement. So, you may have seen, hopefully you've seen, from that top-down view, everything has moved forward except for these robots, the Castellan robots, the Data Smith and the Tech Priest back here. Staying put, even on the other side over there, we've got our Angry Tech Priest and those Flamer Boys moving forward. Not quite in range of that objective marker on that side, thanks to the terrain. But the Vanguard are in range of the Dread Knight. The robots are obviously in range of the Dread Knight. The robots are in range of about everything on the table, including the Terminators that they can see. These guys moved forward. These Castellan Destroyers are holding the objective, as well as the Dune Crawler. So that's a little bit more work for these Grey Knights to chew through on this side. And we've gone ahead and selected the Benediction of the Omnissiah for the Canticle for this turn, which is re-rolling filled hit rolls of 1. So the whole army is going to do that, whether they're next to a Tech Priest or not. It's going to be interesting. And also declaring from the divinations of the Psalm Code, I think is what it's called. Goodness, the warlord trait. We are declaring that any sixes to wound or to hit will explode and cause an additional hit. So all the firepower coming out of these robots here. Oh, the Data Smith is going to put them in the protector mode on a 2+, rolls a 5. So they're going to be shooting twice while standing still. They don't need to move. They're holding down an objective, and Grey Knights will have to go to them to get it away from them. So that means it's going to be a horrendous number of shots. Yes, Protector Protocol. So he's put them there. They're anchored to the ground. They're not doing anything besides shooting out horrific amounts of firepower, exploding hits on 6s, rerolling 1s with the Tech Priest and the Canticle. So we'll come back when the shooting phase is over, and it might be a really, really short game. Well, shooting phase is done. Wasn't quite as devastating, and yet it was exactly as it was expected, I suppose. We did lose a Cataphront Destroyer to supercharging over here, even with the rerolling 1s. But they did do some hurt on the Dread Knight. Doomcrawler didn't really do much. I think he helped between the Destroyers and the Doomcrawler. They killed a Terminator. And then all of the firepower from this central group went into the Dread Knight, along with the Destroyers over here on this side. They could see it. Took it down to 2 wounds. We did make an error in judgment by splitting fire from the Castellan robots. So those guys, one of them shot the Terminators. The one on the end shot the Terminators. Could just see them, but with the dense cover, it was -1 to hit. Forgot that the robots hit on 4s. So hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, even with exploding 6s, didn't do a whole lot. We took a single wound off of the Terminator because they made a lot of 4-up saves. It actually was 6 wounds that went through, but made a lot of 4-up saves on that. So that's how it goes. If we'd focused fire on the Dread Knight, it should probably be dead by now as well. Then over here, boom, poor little Dreadnought. Might be just because he wasn't painted yet. I apologize to my good friend that gave me the lucky Dreadnought. He died. He got absolutely obliterated. 1 Destroyer was lost in the barrage, supercharging and blowing himself up. But they popped the poor Dreadnought by a couple of wounds. We did spend some command points. We did a command point reroll at one point for the Dread Knight. Didn't do any good. We spent the command point for Plasma Specialist for these guys. So all of their shots were doing 3 damage instead of 2. And then they had the exploding 6s. It was a lot of firepower coming out of those guys that took down the Dreadnought over here. We did use the stratagem to reduce incoming damage by 1. So put him back down to regular 2 damage plasmas. It probably helped some, to be honest, but it sure was not enough to keep him alive. So the Adeptus Mechanicus get 1 kill, gives them 3 points for Abhor the Witch, and we will mark up the score on our app. And yeah, we'll go into the Grey Knights. They're going to move. Not a whole lot, apparently. Mr. Dread Knight's going to sit still for as long as he's still alive, because he's barely going to move at 2 wounds. And we're going to try to make a comeback. So the Grey Knights have moved out. This Terminator squad moved around from these trees. They're still going to be in the dense cover, so if those robots have ideas, they'll be shooting at them through cover, making a -1 to hit again. Crow also moved around. Funny, he's not a Terminator. He has a better save than Terminators, and he goes faster. But it is what it is. Both Crow and this Terminator are 9 inches away from the Doomcrawler. Really hoping that they'll make some charges. Mr. Dread Knight has sat still. He is hurt, and he doesn't really want to go anywhere because we can at least hold an objective here. Plus, his weapons are in range of everything on the board, even if he's only hitting on... I think he's only hitting on 5s, potentially. Interceptor Squad, they move 12 inches, and they go over terrain features, like they fly, even though they technically don't have the fly keyword. Just a cool rule about them. So they got up here, taking the objective A. Won't do us any good this battle round, but if they somehow were alive at the end of the next turn, we'll get points for that. This Terminator squad shuffled around so they can see the destroyers over there, but we were doing some measuring, as you might have seen, and there is room for them to teleport seems silly because it's only 9 inches, but they can land back here, and the way that the exact distances are, they can land here, and then they will be within 3 inches of that objective marker, so they would actually be a objective secure unit holding it, plus they would be 9 inches away from those guys, which would allow them to make a charge if they want to. Potentially, we'll see. So there's some things to do for the Grey Knights, and the Interceptor squad also has Vortex of Doom, so they'll be casting that on the Castellans. The Castellan, the Cataphren, destroyers, because if you come over here, this destroyer is in line of sight of that guy, and it has to be the nearest visible enemy unit. So we can get that done. That'll be kind of nice. If it goes off, it could help us out quite a bit. Doing mortal wounds is a good way to take care of things with lots of firepower. So we're going to do the psychic phase, shooting phase, and we'll come back with a summary. They're very interesting. I'm actually surprised at how many Grey Knights are still alive after the first round of shooting from the Adeptus Mechanicus. Here we go. Alright, so don't underestimate Grey Knight's shooting. We were able to destroy this group of Cataphren destroyers. Actually, we didn't really focus on anything else. The destroyers have objectives secured. Unfortunately, we failed the charge even with rerolls, so this Dune Crawler is still going to hold that objective, and then he did a little shooting, didn't hurt too many things. We didn't look at or shoot at this mess over here yet, just because those destroyers were closer to objectives and were a little more threatening. Over here, you would have seen, or will see, highlights from the Psychic phase. The Strike Squad failed Vortex of Doom, so they spent a CP, re-rolled it, got 12, which is great for the extra super strong Vortex. They took D3 mortal wounds for going above and beyond, so that hurt them. And then they rolled a 1. Took 1 wound off a Cataphren Destroyer. 1 wound! It was horrible. Frustrating. Then these guys made their Gate of Infinity jump, so they're also within 3 inches of that objective. And they spent a couple of command points, Cybold ammunition to strengthen the Stormbolters. And I forgot to mention, this army likes to stay in the shooty shoot tide, so the Stormbolters become strength 6, minus 1 AP and 2 damage each when you're using that tide of convergence. And we gave them Fury of the Proven, so they were hitting on 2s with the Stormbolters, 3s with a side cannon. Long story short, they did the work on that squad of destroyers, so Grey Knights prevented the AdMech from scoring Grind Them Down. But with the failed charge, we didn't get engaged on all fronts with the Grey Knights either. So our secondaries, 0. The Adeptus Mechanicus did get 3 points in secondaries on their first turn, so it's going to be 3-0 going into turn 2. And then we'll score up who's holding what. The Adeptus Mechanicus and the Grey Knights at this point are going to be tied going into the end of turn 2, but we'll come back after we score up all the primaries and secondaries. Movement phase is done. This guy stayed still, holding the objective. The robots and the Data Smith have stayed still. Tech Priest here went forward to give some auras. The Vanguard have moved up so that they are touching this building, can see through it, shoot into Terminators or the Strikes or Interceptor squad. The 2 Plasma Boys are in range and line of sight of the big dog here, the Dread Knight. And even though he did get his Sanctuary off, it's still going to be a lot of shots coming his direction. Tech Priest in the corner came up and around, so he's in range of a pretty doable charge. He also has line of sight and range on the Dread Knight, so lots of things that are going to be shooting at him and then splitting fire to pick off other things. Castellan robots, just before we get started on the shooting phase. One on the left side can see the Terminators back there, but the guy on the right cannot. The Castellan robot on the right side, or now left, has line of sight. Well, they both have line of sight on these Terminators. So the choices are going to be, actually, Castellan Crow is technically closer. Look at that. So we might split fire, try to reduce both squads of Terminators, and or pick off Crow with the Castellan robots. We'll have to see. It is going to be -1 to shoot at anybody in this group over here, so that's a little bit of a hindrance. But if there's nothing left to shoot on that side of the board, well, then we'll just have to get it done. Come back at the end of the turn with a little summary. Okay, end of the turn. The Tech Priest and the Vanguard made it into combat, killed the Interceptor squad that was here. The Vanguard went ahead and piled on into the Terminators just so the Terminators can't, I guess, charge into the Tech Priest or consolidate their position. So right now, I believe the way it works out, there's only one Terminator that's in range of the objective secure to hold that, so the Vanguard have technically stolen that from him, which means the Grey Knights are not going to score points on this turn because, not surprising, the Grandmaster in Dread Knight armor has died. He's actually finished off by this guy's relic gun, the XC1X. I don't, again, remember what all those Roman numerals mean. Sorry. These robots, they did some split fire because they had to, really. The Terminators over here can only be seen by one of them, so they killed 1.5 Terminators with one robot. The other robot shot into Crow on this side, took him down to 2 wounds remaining. It seemed reasonable. You get more points for killing characters than for killing the Terminators. So the AdMech, with killing the Grandmaster Dread Knight, he is a character as well, so that gave them a lot of points on secondaries. They had 10 points for the primary, so they're doing pretty good, and there's not a whole lot left for the Grey Knights. It's kind of disappointing. So we'll score it up here at the end of the turn. We'll do movement for the turn 2 Grey Knights, and we'll see what happens. So movement phase is done. You would have seen the psychic phase. It was brief. These Terminators cast Hammer Hand on themselves, moved up, so they're holding this objective now. Crow is as well. So is the Doomcrawler, but the Terminators are objective secure, so we'll take that one. These Terminators said, we're tired of this mess over here, so they used Gate of Infinity, jumped out, landed on this objective marker over here. So that leaves this group somewhat useless for now. They'll have to move around to get line of sight. It also frees up these Terminators to be able to shoot at their Warlord over there. And these guys over here, line of sight's going to be a little tricky. But one guy can see the Warlord in the background. These other 2 guys can see the Castellan robots, or they're just going to put all their firepower into the Doomcrawler. Probably the one guy will go ahead and shoot at the Warlord back there for fun, and the other 2 will shoot into the Doomcrawler. Neither target's really a perfectly good target, but the idea here is that anything we can kill is better than nothing. So, going into Grey Knight's turn 2, not a lot left. There's 3 units left on the table. It is looking grim, so the more we can kill, the happier we'll be. End of the shooting phase, nothing exciting happened. That's about right for, what's left of the army. These guys did manage to, in total, plink off 2 wounds with shooting on the Doomcrawler. They all made their charges. Crow made it in first. He swung first and didn't do anything. The Terminators came in with Hammer Hand. They were able to take another wound in total. So they've taken 3 wounds off the Doomcrawler. There's a reason why the Grey Knights, my particular army, has been afraid of playing against AdMech for a little while, and this smaller point game is proving this to be true. Obviously that guy stayed still, didn't move. He doesn't mind because he can shoot in combat. These guys are here, the squad of Vanguard. They have climbed up on top of the crates here, and they have clean line of sight into this Terminator squad that is holding our objective in our deployment zone. This dude, he did shuffle around, trying to see if he couldn't get line of sight on the Terminators. He cannot. He's still holding that objective, and that's fine. He's doing his job. His gun actually has done a lot of damage, and that's been pretty cool. These guys obviously don't have to move. The Tech Priest fell back, so he can't be targeted again. So that's about it. We're going to do the shooting phase. We will come right back when that's done. And currently, the score is 36-0 against the Grey Knights. So that kind of stings a little bit. End of the combat phase. We have dropped the Dune Crawler down to 3 wounds remaining. Shooting was uneventful. The Dune Crawler missed. And then things he did hit were able to save because there was no AP from those stubbers. Over here, these guys actually weathered all of the shots from the Castellan robots over there. Took 3 wounds from all of that. And then the Vanguard fired all their shots into there and didn't do anything. Getting the +1 cover for being behind these barricades helped them out a bit. So there's still 1 guy left on 1 wound. So that means the Grey Knights are actually going to score points in their next turn. That's kind of exciting. So it won't be a complete blank of a score. And we'll see what can happen here. So going into the Grey Knights, turn 3. Well, the Psychic phase was fun. These guys failed to get Hammerhand to go off. Castellan Crow, however, does a mighty 3-inch smite, but it always does d6 mortal wounds. So he did a smite into the big Dune Crawler. Of course, he killed it. Well, then the AdMech, because they're cheeky like that, spent 1 command point to auto-explode the Dune Crawler, which resulted in the immediate and instantaneous death, that's redundant, I know, of Castellan Crow. So he's gone. We lost 1 Terminator to that deal. This guy over here, nothing that he really needs to do because he's earning us points, and that's about all he can hope for right now. And if he periled, he would be dead. So that's the end of the movement Psychic phase. There will be some shooting. There's not a lot to shoot at. This squad is in a bad spot where they, well, one of them can see into the Castellan robots. We can see this direction into the Vanguard, but they're probably too far away. So we'll do some measurements and we'll come back after this. As expected, not a lot has happened here. This 1 Terminator is now wounded because he fired shots into the Castellan robots over there, and they reflected back the damage on a 5-up. There were wounds taken on this Castellan robot, and yeah, not dead. So the Data Smith and the Tech Priest are going to heal it back up to full wounds, I'm pretty sure, and then the Grey Knights are going to feel real salty. This guy's still holding the point. Those guys took some shots from this 1 Terminator, but they made their saves and we're fine. So that's it. Turn number 4 coming up for the AdMech, and we'll get some more points for them. And the Grey Knights will never concede, but as you can tell, some very short turns. Over here, this Tech Priest scooted forward. He still is within 3 inches of the objective marker. We measured to make sure. But he moved forward so we could support this squad of remaining Vanguard. They shuffled forward so all of them that were left would be able to get line of sight on the last Terminator here. Decided to sit still over here. These Castellan robots, one of them can see into the Terminator squad, and that's all it takes. And then we'll roll to heal the robots real quick. Might as well just do that live because I nearly forgot to do it. So it's going to be 2d3. Those, the Data Smith and the Tech Priest both get that. So it heals up 5 wounds. Puts them back to full health, which is about what I expected. That's it. So we'll go into the mighty shooting phase, and we'll come back and see if anybody from the Grey Knights is still standing. Well, the poor guys, they're all dead. The Adeptus Mechanicus proved to be victorious here. Final score was 77-12. That is an absolute thrashing. Yeah, I don't know. Have to rethink that list a little bit. The terrain definitely did not help. So the AdMech getting to go first and also picking deployment zones, so forcing the Grey Knights to be a little exposed at the beginning of the game. Didn't do them any favors. But also the AdMech, for 1,000 points, they can put out a firepower that is just horrific. So it's very interesting. I have to think about how I would tweak that Grey Knights list. I'm not sure what I would do differently. Well, Castellan Crow, I forgot that his sword wasn't as special as the name that it has, the Black Blade of Antwer. But it didn't help him any in combat, so I might swap him out for a Brotherhood champion, just because he gets the cool fight on death for free, and the sword actually can do damage. And if maybe it would have helped to have a different unit hold this objective here in the back first, and then be able to launch the Dread Knight up into the front, deal with this stuff up close. Who knows? Who knows? There are some things that probably could be done differently, but the amount of firepower, the lack of wounds dealt to the Castellan robots, I mean, it's a lot of threats you got to deal with. AdMech are in a good spot right now anyways, and it was a lot of fun. Haven't used the AdMech for a while, reading up and using their cool rules. They've got some nifty warlord traits that, I'm going to forget what to call it again. Divine Psalms or something along those lines. The warlord trait for this guy over here, we just use the sixes explode on hits for shooting for every turn. That turned these Castellan robots into lawnmowers. They were awful. Did the same for the Vanguard squad when they were still close enough to the Tech Priest to get the reroll, or to get that aura from him, because it's a 6-inch aura. It's not for the entire army. But that was powerful. Did a lot of work, turned those Castellans into even more deadly shooting firepower. In the end, these last two Terminators that were sitting over here, it was only one of the Castellan robots worth of shooting that eliminated them, with wounds left over to have taken out another probably two. So they could have killed almost an entire squad from one robot with that overcharge and no minus to hit, and rerolling ones because of the aura from the Tech Priest. So it's pretty cool, pretty fun list, pretty deadly list. So we'll do some experimenting, and probably be seeing this same list for the AdMech again. Might do a little bit of reading up. The Ryza special rule for their plasma specialists was what destroyed the Dreadnought in turn 1, was shooting from that one squad of Cataphren destroyers. But aside from that, we didn't use, or might be pronounced Ryza, I call it Ryza. Aside from that, we didn't see any other benefits from that. So might be something we'll look at some of the other Forge Worlds, kind of experiment with. The Relic gun on the other Tech Priest was pretty fantastic. Even his Warlord trait to reroll wounds in combat didn't come into effect because the Terminators left him before he could hit them, and the Vanguard squad actually wiped the Interceptor squad. Their rad saturation, making the units -1 if they're within 1 inch of them, -1 toughness, was just too much. Took them right out. So the AdMech Adeptus Mechanicus, they have great rules. Turned out to be just a slaughter of a game. I guess that's what the Grey Knights get for coming in here uninvited, even though they're supposed to be good friends with the Adeptus Mechanicus. Debatable. Anyways, it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed the game. Thank you for watching. This has been another battle report from the Kitchen Table Wargaming. And here's the Adeptus Mechanicus incursion force. We'll start over here. We have a Vanguard squad. We have Castellan robots and a cybernetic data smith. We have the 2 Tech Priests. The one on the right is the Warlord, and he has the data psalm. I'll have to correct myself on that. I'll tell you what that is in a minute. But he's the Warlord. He has one of the newer Warlord traits, and that's part of why I don't remember the name. It's one where at the beginning of the turn you can select one of 3 options, and everybody within 6 inches can either reroll failed charges or reroll hit rolls of 1, I think. And then there's one other option, so I will get that straight once we're actually playing a game. To the left is a second Tech Priest. He has paid the command point to have a Warlord trait, Magos Biologist, I believe is how it's pronounced. It lets him reroll failed wounds in combat, and it just makes him kind of fun. We'll try that out today and see how it goes, and he's carrying the special gun. So that's him. Then we have a squad of 3 Cataphren destroyers. These guys have the Phosphorus Blasters and the Plasma Culverins. These 3 destroyers have the Flamers and the Plasma Culverins. And then, last but not least, we have the Dune Crawler. And he is going to be rocking out with the Neutron Heavy Laser and the Cognos Heavy Stubbers.